The art style of Halo Campaign Evolved has very quickly become one of its most controversial elements. Graphically speaking, the game is gorgeous, but aesthetically speaking, well, things aren't quite as peachy. Yeah, sure, they threw us a bone with a couple things. The Magnum, Foehammer, the Warthog, the Pelican, Chief, all very much in line with their original aesthetic. But broadly speaking, very few elements of Halo 1 have received this kind of treatment in the remake. Now, the most innocently apparent example of this is of course the Covenant. Not a single member of the Covenant in Halo Campaign Evolved bears their Halo 1 design. The Hunter is a mostly new model, whilst the Elites, Grunts, and Jackals are simply ported versions of their Halo Infinite counterparts. The Covenant design in Halo Campaign Evolved does not resemble Halo 1 at all, despite the fact that numerous community artists have proven time and time again that it is absolutely possible to bring those iconic 2001 designs into modern graphical fidelity and look damn good in the process. Campaign Evolved's Covenant art style clearly needs a major overhaul before release, but that's not the focus of today's video. Whilst yes, I clearly feel very strongly about Halo 1's Covenant, even I can admit that those feelings are more subjective. Sure, Halo 1 Remake's elites should look like the Halo 1 elites, absolutely, but those specific designs aren't a vital asset in selling you the world of Halo. The Forerunner designs, on the other hand, are a different matter entirely. Halo 1's Forerunner aesthetic was imperative in building the atmosphere of this ancient ring world that we found ourselves stranded on. It was vital in giving us a subtle yet surprisingly deep insight into those who built it, and crucial in forming the atmospheric foundation of, well, the entire game and franchise. Despite the presence of Guilty Spark and the Sentinels, the aesthetic of Halo 1's Forerunner architecture was the primary vector through which the character of the Forerunners as a faction was built. Despite the lack of even one actual living Forerunner, it informed us so much about them. Their culture, their motivations, and their personality as a species were all expertly baked into the architecture that this ancient race had left behind. Halo 1's architecture provides truly some of the most slept-on environmental storytelling of all time, but unfortunately, as per what little we've seen so far, Halo Campaign Evolved doesn't seem to have translated this unique style particularly well, which I think is massively to the detriment of its once superb world building. So, a very important detail that I think gets forgotten quite a lot that we need to start out with is just the general lack of knowledge and context that both us and even Bungie had about the Halo universe at the time of Halo 1's creation. Of course, being the first game in the series, very little was known on either side about the history of the Forerunners, of the Flood, of the Covenant, or really anything beyond the bare essentials. What we did know, however, was that the Forerunners, despite having long vanished, were still a core part of the universe via the legacy that they left behind. In their absence, their character was primarily conveyed through their architecture. As ambiguous as everything felt on the surface, if you stopped to inspect the installations and the structures on the Ringworld for just a single moment, you could see the clear intentionality behind so much of their designs. Forerunner structures were designed for function over form. Almost every bit of the architecture had pragmatism at its core. But at the same time, there were also very clear religious notes baked into the architecture as well. From grand murals stretching from floor to ceiling, to cathedral-like gilded walls and hallways that feel as if they were pulled straight from an ancient buried temple. These designs were familiar enough for us to clock their religious implications, but still esoteric enough for us to not quite understand their true meaning. Really, even up until Halo 1 Anniversary, the Forerunners, as they were before the Halos were fired at least, always had this kind of ancient elders vibe. As if they were these archaic yet hyper-advanced monks, almost, with wisdom beyond our understanding, who sacrificed themselves to save us from the Flood, an ancient power that we simply can't comprehend. Hell, 343 even depicted them with this almost exact vibe in the Halo 1 Anniversary terminals, and their architecture reflected it perfectly. From exploring just the silent cartographer alone, you could see why the Covenant held the Forerunners in such reverence. But equally, Bungie wove a really interesting juxtaposition into their design language. They could have very easily just made their visual design entirely futuristic, full of neon lights, perfectly preserved metals, and levitating platforms that blatantly defied every law of reality whenever possible. But they didn't. Yes, their technology was clearly advanced, as evidenced by hard light bridges, holograms, and, well, you know, the fact that they built a giant floating ring in space. But while it was clearly more advanced than anything we had built, it also felt significantly older than us, lost and forgotten. And out of all the levels in Halo 1, the Silent Cartographer was the level that I think executed on these design philosophies the best. Grounding the designs in this way made them feel somewhat familiar, while simultaneously far beyond modern humanity's technological capabilities. This, of course, was one of the many not-so-subtle hints at Forerunners being human, but I digress. It's this unique juxtaposition that sold the world of Alpha Halo in Halo 1. It made the setting far more than just a hyper-futuristic alien world in space. It was clearly brimming with deep meaning and purpose, and you couldn't help but be infatuated with the history and the sacrifice of those who built it. This juxtaposition was a core building block of Halo 1's atmosphere, and it was one of the biggest selling points for the Halo universe in general. I think we can all agree here that it was one of the strongest first impressions that a new franchise has ever made with its universe, and with a whole new generation about to go through that very process for the first time, it needs to be upheld. But so far, it really doesn't look like it's gonna be. So let's take a comparative look at some of the examples from what little we've seen so far. But real quick before we do, if you're after a brand new monster of a PC, then look no further than my Flood-themed PCs, made in partnership with Apex Gaming PCs. From the Pure Form to the Gravemind and the ultra-powerful Primordial build, there's a build for every price and power level for you to choose from. Just head to the link in the description and pick one of these bad boys up today. When you first get to the island, you're greeted by a gigantic megastructure on the beach that reaches out into the shallows of this infinite ocean. Its function is actually to anchor the subterranean tunnel network to the ground, but we're going to come to that soon. The visual design of this structure is really interesting. The top side is slightly pearlescent, seemingly quite pristine, but the further down the strut you go, the more you start to notice visible rust and erosion, exposing layers of ancient alloy beneath the structure's surface. There's clear water staining too, both on the bottom of the strut and also on the central part of the structure at the very same level, which implies that 100 millennia of rising and lowering tides have eroded the Forerunner metal and given it a rather aged look. In Campaign Evolved, at a first glance the structure shares the same grandiose size, but it's noticeably more angular and less brutalist. It's simply a different style to the original, and I don't think it quite resembles its function as well, but that's only a minor detail. The worst change is the total and utter lack of any water erosion on the strut or even the central structure. From the bottom to the top of each, the colour and the wear is the exact same. This structure looks brand new, not like it's stood the test of the elements for 100,000 years, which immediately takes away the lost and ancient feeling that the island had in the original. And how prevalent this shine and lack of wear is among the rest of the architecture on the island as well only exacerbates this problem. Further, the detailing across the structure is far more abstract and ambiguous, and thanks to the lack of water erosion, the entire thing is almost the exact same shade of slightly shiny grey. It's practically monochromatic, and ironically, it looks far less detailed and ancient as a result. On a similar note, as you mount up and drive towards the Cartographer, in the original Halo 1, you'll notice a large chunk taken out of the cliff wall, exposing a hidden layer of Forerunner alloy beneath the rock, hinting at how deep into the, quote, natural, quote, world these artificial structures really go. This is another example of the island suffering from 100 millennia of wear and tear, and at some point, succumbing in some capacity to the elements. It's another example of just how ancient this world is being implied through the world design, instead of just being outright told to you. But in the remake, this detail just isn't there. It's just a simple, unscathed, Mediterranean-looking cliff face with no signs of damage or wear that honestly looks like it could be anywhere in the galaxy. Earth, Reach, Alpha Halo, you name it. Going further inland to the first hunter encounter, you don't realise it at the time, but you're actually fighting them on a giant hatch that covers the entrance to the subterranean tunnels that connect to the Halo's control room. As such, the big brutalist arm-like structure is actually a fully functioning latch designed to raise and open the hatch. You can even see the hinge at the very back of it. Its design was one of pure pragmatism. It also happens to be in the shape of the reclaimer symbol as well, which is very fitting given that it was designed to tunnel reclaimers to the control room. In the remake, however, its pure pragmatism design has been overridden by an overly designed, almost beam tower-esque structure. The sheer size and shape of this structure alone just wouldn't allow the hatch to reciprocate. But when you consider that it's not even on a hinge anymore, but rather is just fixed to the wall on some kind of mount, that endeavour becomes even more possible. This hatch couldn't even open. The design overrides its function. Descending into the substructures, the inherent holiness of the Forerunners and their architecture starts to become apparent. The murals and various patterns on the walls and ceilings imply a deeper meaning. The ramps are bronze-brushed, with grand gilded panels housing vast blue lights that reach up to the rafters in the ceiling at the base of them, whilst deeper down, candle-like light fixtures envelop the murals in that soft, holy golden light, filling the rooms with that very same holy aura, making them reminiscent of a lost ancient temple. Certain parts of these facilities really do invoke feelings of an advanced, futuristic, yet grounded cathedral. The monastic aura down here is palpable. But the remake, unfortunately, really loses this aesthetic. The monastic tomb feeling is entirely absent, replaced by monochromatic walls and floors, all the same shiny grey and illuminated only by cold white lights. It doesn't give ancient lost cathedral feelings, but rather generic futuristic alien hallway feelings. The colour contrasts are gone, the monastic tones are gone, this facility feels cold, brand new, and doesn't cause your mind at all to wonder about the implications of the architecture and its detailing. And then there are the holograms. Originally, the wall holograms, although rather ambiguous in their design, had clear function thanks to the various different coloured shapes and moving objects within them. Even though you couldn't immediately glean their purpose, their designs were very clearly pragmatic, just in a way that we couldn't quite understand. In the remake, they've just been reduced to a bunch of random shapes with no gleanable purpose beyond just looking kind of futuristic. They've gone from looking like advanced terminals to just a bunch of holograms on a wall for no reason. Although, I will give credit where it's due, to be fair. I do like how they've reused the same teal hue as the originals for the base colour. That's great, they just need more detail. The cartographer hologram in the original Halo 1 is my favourite hologram, I gotta say, because it's a perfect example of the pragmatism of Forerunner design. At first, it looks like a sci-fi hologram, but when you look closer, you realise that it's literally just a schematic of the cartographer itself, and it's one-to-one accurate with its geometry in-game as well. You can literally see areas that you walk through in the game. It's a clear, universally readable schematic designed such that any reclaimer who came here could use it to navigate the cartographer. But in the remake, this readability seems to have been not thrown out, but muddied quite a bit. It still seems partially readable, but far less so at a first glance. Its design seems to have a layer of kind of unnecessary ambiguity and incomprehensibility added to it, which is entirely counter to its function of showing a reclaimer how to get to the cartographer. And you know, it's interesting because the clear, intentful decision to strip a lot of the detail and character from the Forerunner aesthetic and kind of monotone it up a little bit is even present in the game's logo. The original logo featured intricate, detailed paneling that was dripping with ancient symbolism and meaning, whereas the new logo is literally just white text with a simplified version of the word Halo. Very boring, and a very disappointing departure from the unique style of Halo 1. Part of the intent with the Forerunner's architecture was for it to feel somewhat familiar to us, despite being so advanced, thanks to, of course, the fact that the Forerunners were our ancestors. The architecture was meant to feel familiar, yet distant, in a similar kind of way to how ancient Roman, or ancient Greek, or hell, even Bronze Age fortifications feel to us now. That juxtaposition that I mentioned earlier between the structures feeling simultaneously advanced yet deeply ancient is completely absent in this remake because the structures just don't look ancient. The scales have tipped far too much towards advanced, to the detriment of the world building, and I feel deeply disappointed that new fans that are going to be jumping into Halo for the first time with this remake won't get to experience the mystery and wonder of the world that the original designs invoked. Now, one of the more interesting things about all of this is that we've been here before.
This looks strangely familiar.
Because we've been here before. We're going in circles.
We went through similar eras of critique with the Forerunner aesthetic during Halo 4 and Halo 5, and 343 finally listened with Halo Infinite, resulting in an almost universally lauded aesthetic course correction. Don't get me wrong, I still think that Infinite suffers from being too shiny in quite a few places, but broadly speaking, its Forerunner aesthetic was a huge return to form that brought back a lot of the mystery that had been absent for God knows how long. The overall shape of most of Infinite's architecture, its use of Combat Evolved inspired detailing, bronzes and gilded accents, and designs that felt ancient yet advanced at the same time, feel, ironically in hindsight, far more in line with Halo 1's Forerunner art style than the art style of the Halo 1 remake. The Silent Auditorium is a great example of this. A gilded facility with large, brutalist statues of hooded Forerunner elders absolutely invokes that ancient mystery feeling of Halo 1, and honestly, it even brings back some of its monastic and almost cult-like tones for the Forerunners as well. Broadly speaking, Infinite got it. So what happened between Infinite and now that meant that its return to form had to completely vanish and be replaced with, well, whatever the hell it is that we've gotten in the remake? You know, I think my biggest problem overall, and I think this is the root cause of most of the issues with the Forerunner aesthetic in this remake, is the clear removal of pragmatic design. Bungie baked intentionality, both clear and subtle, into the Forerunner's world design, separating them from the flashy designs of the Covenant and the militaristic designs of the UNSC, and making their architecture feel inherently utilitarian. But in the remake, that design philosophy has been replaced with a weird kind of abstractism. Function has been replaced by form. So hopefully I've pointed out some of the strong points of Halo 1's aesthetic adequately enough in this video to really, hopefully at least, spark some change. I mean, the game is still likely a year out from launch, and if you ask me, if they really want the atmosphere and world building of the game to even hold a candle to the original, they need to return to the tones that Bungie's Halo 1 shipped with, or new fans that are jumping in for the first time with this remake are going to be in for a seriously dumbed down first experience with this amazing universe. But I think it'd be unproductive of me to make a video like this and at the very least not touch on some of the elements that I think they have gotten right with the remake, because as much as it seems like it is in this video, it's not all bad. So, firstly, I really like how they've kept the ominous dark tone to the interior lighting. Rooms are lit a little bit differently now compared to the original, but many of the rooms that emphasize darkness and eeriness seem to have, for the most part, upheld that very same atmosphere, which, I gotta say, is a stark difference to Halo 1 Anniversary. That almost indescribable Y2K sci-fi ominous feeling does genuinely feel present in some of the rooms in this remake. The same kind of praise can be applied to the design of the Chasm room as well. Although I do think that the actual architecture itself suffers from some of the issues with the Forerunner design language that we've covered so far. But I will say it does retain that foreboding, ominous feeling of the original. I'm really happy that they've kept that huge floor-to-ceiling mural in the entrance hall of the Cartographer, because that mural is vital in defining the holy aura of the facility. And I also love how similar some of the light accents are to the original as well. They still invoke that almost church stained glass window aesthetic, despite being a little bit brighter this time around, and honestly, would fit in excellently with the rest of the architecture were it redesigned to feel more faithful to the original. Give the rooms that almost monastic ancient church vibe from the original, and these light fixings would fit right in. So that is my hyper deep dive into what I think Halo 1 did so well with its Forerunner aesthetic, and how the remake kind of misses that mark, but also, hopefully at least, how the remake can actually meet that mark before launch with a few changes here and there. It is absolutely possible, it can be done, I just hope that it is done. Let me know your thoughts on both my analysis and also the art style itself down below in the comments, and with that said, let's round this one out there. I want to give a huge thank you to Orzenia the Crazed Collector for becoming a new Iconic One over on Patreon, and to Cheeky Squid for becoming a 117 Australian dollar Iconic One as well. My friends, thank you very, very much. That is insanely generous. I kind of am sort of lost for words, to be honest. Thank you very, very much. And of course, big thank you to everybody else who continues to support me over there as well. And thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I'll catch you all in the next one.